This is big bass for your small space, ported version of the JL8W7 subwoofer. Inside this time a 12-inch concrete form tube. I'm a big fan of Bazooka-style enclosures. I've always been a fan of Bazooka since they were around in the 90s in my youth, and just how much output you get for how affordable they were and the amount of power they required. And I always wanted to build one with a really high-end speaker, so this is a bucket list build. And one of the coolest things about these tubes, especially if you use a nice setup with your audio, with your speaker and your amplifier, they're very light. They don't take up too much space, and they just have a sound that is unique to the tube. They have a strong attack. They hit hard, very efficient. So stick around, I'll show you guys how to make this A to Z, and we'll also compare it to the older sealed version that you can see back there on the wall. We're gonna do SPL and sound quality tests on both of them. Hopefully this ported version has just as musical of a sound quality as the sealed, but we get about 3 to 6 more dBs. That's what I'm hoping for. So stick around, let's do this. Now, a lot of consideration went into what am I gonna use for this, this build. And while I used PVC on the last one, and I do like PVC because it's super easy, there's really like hardly any prep work. You just cut it and you glue it together. When you get into the 12-inch size tubes, that just starts to get pretty expensive with PVC. Not just that, it's pretty heavy. And in this build, it's going in the back of a sports car. I don't want to add extra weight that's going to affect any kind of handling. It's one of the things that I really like about Bazooka builds is they're a lot lighter than a box enclosure in most cases. And so what we're using, this SonoTube back there, now I did get the heavy duty version from the local concrete supplier. It's almost a 1/4 inch thick. It's a lot lighter than MDF, significantly lighter than PVC. And I think if we do a couple layers of it where I'll laminate it kind of like a plywood, it should be just as solid and sturdy as MDF, and actually have a little bit of sound dampening that you get the benefit from with MDF as well. I also decided to go with an Aeroport here as opposed to previous builds with ported tubes on 8-inch. I've built sort of like this half moon kind of port that runs along the length, just like you'd find with traditional Bazooka tubes. That's actually pretty complicated for a DIY design, and I think with this subwoofer, we'd probably hear chuffing with the amount of airflow it's moving. And so going into the Aeroport, it allowed me to go down to a 3-inch port because we can handle, with these curved entrance and exits, we can actually handle about double the airspeed volume according to their claims that you would get from a slotted port. And so that allows me to keep a shorter port because when you drop into your diameter, you can go shorter, and that makes it feasible to use this enclosure. It's going to have a total of about 24-inch outer length, which then gives me about 4 or 5 inches between the woofer face on each side and the sidewall of the trunk, which should be ideal for cabin gain and clean sounding bass. So I ran all those things before running this, so you guys don't have to. And this build, while it sounds complicated, is gonna be surprisingly simple now that all that's figured out. And I hope to hear from you guys after you've tried it yourself. Just a quick view at my chicken scratch plans. As you can see, we're looking for a 19-inch internal length. I'm gonna put a 1.5-inch thick baffle and on the front and the rear. And I'm gonna have it inset inside the tube by 1 inch, and the tube length here, which gives us a total length of 13 inches with the ends that are flared. And that should get us to our JL audio tuning target of 36.8 Hertz. And this is a nice slab of acacia cutting board material that was left over from a job that I did when I had my cabinet business running. And it's just such a beautiful wood. I know it's probably not as, we'll say humidity resistant as MDF, but it's just so pretty that I'm gonna go ahead and use this as our baffle material on either end of this sub and then not carpet this portion of it. Let's talk a little bit about this 8W7 and why I chose it. Yes, they are damn expensive. I think this retails for $900. I fortunately got this on an open box deal on Crutchfield for $599, which is still really expensive. And I do realize that there's probably even at that price point other subwoofers that would rival this, but it depends on your definition of rival. There's definitely subwoofers that are cheaper than that will put out way more output than this. Like, look at the DD Audio 2508s. Those things are just insane, right? But why did I choose this bad boy? Not to say I wouldn't die to have one of those DD audios. Part of it's nostalgia for me because I grew up in the 90s and these things were just groundbreaking back then. And this same old technology still sounds wonderful. The musicality of these subs is hard to beat. Like if you actually want to listen to music and sound what a bass guitar sounds like, if you're playing the guitar, this subwoofer is going to replicate that really well. You also can't beat just the sexy factor. They just look great. This silver aluminum ring around the outside, it just spells elegance, and I wanted something elegant for the car that it's going into. The other thing is, because they do this, your 8-inch measurement is actually from the outside of the surround both ways, which increases the cone area. And so you're getting probably another inch versus some other brands. In either case, I love this thing. It puts out great output for its size, and we're about to see what that maximally looks like once we get this bad boy ported. So the first thing I'm gonna do is get our tube cut. We're not gonna use the full 6 feet of this, although it would be pretty cool to need to use all 6 feet of this. And as one of you guys mentioned in my post, this would make one hell of a port if you were using like a, I don't know, 100-inch subwoofer. In any case, the easy way to cut a straight line on this, which is where we need to start, it came with kind of a rough edge, so I'm gonna clean that up first, is a piece of paper, or this is like thin cardboard. And I got this at Costco for free. This is just like part of their packaging. And so if we get these ends to line up, I can tape this, which is what I'll do, and then we're gonna trace that. That'll give us a straight edge to cut on. So just gonna take my shop pencil and trace that edge. Voila. I'm gonna use a Japanese razor saw on this because fine teeth shouldn't fray this as bad. And I think it's gonna be faster than using an X-Acto, maybe even straighter. You could use a box cutter if you're really on a budget, or just get a utility blade from the hardware store. And yeah, this is gonna work. Okay, there is our official size. We're gonna do 2 of those, and pretty happy with how it came out. In case you're wondering why I use this or a hand tool instead, well, I've got all these fancy tools on the wall. My shop teacher, John Pruitt, back in probably 9th grade when I first took wood shop, said, power tools only make you make mistakes faster. So at least I can make them in slow motion instead this way. Went ahead and scribed with the old one, so I know we're exactly the same length. Okay, the last thing I'm gonna do is cut 2 6-inch sections of this. And this is gonna go on the inside, and it's gonna back up against the baffle, and it'll act somewhat like a rabbet joint. It'll not only square up that baffle when I push it inside, but it's also gonna give it an extra adhesion surface. All right, there it all is. I guess we'll see if it's sturdy enough to hold that JL8W7 in place. This is a test. You'll be the first to know. I need to cut, according to my math, 1 1/4 inches out of this in order to pinch that together and make that fit inside of there. So we're gonna do the same thing. Just use the same slow mistake saw right here. Fingers crossed. Did I do the math right? Oh, just about perfect. All right, now the last thing is this tube is gonna get cut down the middle. This is gonna fall short. It's gonna have probably a gap that we need to fill with something. I'll probably use some wood epoxy just to fill that. and then I'll cover it in carpet. But we need to split that seam now. All right, we're gonna do a test fit. Just let's see what we get when we open this up and slide this in there. There, see there's a seam. I'm not too worried about it, like I said. We'll just fill that later and then it's gonna get carpet. You never know it's there. But now we have pretty sturdy, and we reinforce those to be even sturdier. And for those of you that think I'm crazy, only using 3/8 of an inch of cardboard for this build, maybe I'm crazy. This is experimental. We're gonna find out. So one of the problems with this laminating idea, and maybe you don't even need to laminate. There's a guy, Basstronic, shout out to you, buddy. He puts all his speakers in SonoTubes because the natural shape of that tube just helps the sound. It really makes a nice natural sound. But the issue with laminating is the inside of these is coated with wax. And that's because these are concrete form tubes. It's going to be wet in there, and they dissolve if they didn't protect it from the water and the concrete while they're casting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sand out and use my Rotex. This is random orbit sander, and I'm just going to scuff that. It doesn't need to be sanded off completely, but I need to get to that dry cardboard underneath in order for the glue to adhere. And you don't have to use one of these. You can do it by hand, but if you have one, it'll probably save some time. I think it would have been a little easier if I did that before cutting it, but you can see, I mean, that's essentially what you need to do. Good enough for government work. All right. We're gonna do a little glue up here. I might need a new apron. What do you guys think? We're gonna coat this thing in Loctite PL3X. I like this because it's a slow cure, gives you time to work before it sets up and even develops a skin, which is nice. It does take 24 hours to cure, but typically the slower curing adhesives are the stronger ones. So we're gonna just kind of cover the heck out of it and wipe it on with my hands and then drop that sleeve on. Let's see how it goes. Whew. Yuck. Slide the fresh one over the top of that. And then we're going to use a combination of what I have to tie it down. I've got an adjustable bungee, I have some ratchet straps, and if you have any other ideas, drop them in the comments below. All right, I got a nice bagoosh line right on the edge there, so to me, that's gonna hold pretty good. We're gonna now work on getting the insides inside of it. Base cannon. Thing's gonna work. All right, we're gonna cut this to 7 inches, and then the port flare on each end brings it to a total of 13 inches, and that'll get us the tuning we want. This is gonna give us just over 2 inches of clearance to where the magnet is. That's about the minimum amount of clearance you wanna have to not affect the sound quality. We'll find out. But what you see here on the table is my Festool router setup, and I have this brand new Jasper 2000 SE Special Edition circle jig, which, man, I'm telling you, What perfect timing. I reached out to them because I knew they made circle jigs for basically every other brand of router except for the one I had, which is Festool. It just so happens they just made one. It's not even released as the time of this recording, but by the time you guys see it, this will be available on their website. This is the 2000 SE. If you have a Festool OF 1400, or I think the other one's a 1010. And so that's like their small and their mid-sized routers. Otherwise, I think the 200 is the model that they make for basically every other brand. You cannot beat these things. I'm gonna show you guys how to use this. I did a test earlier already, and it came out just precision. I couldn't even measure the difference. I couldn't see the difference. I'd probably have to measure it with calipers to see if there was any variance from what it suggested. And you know, it's gonna do in 16th increments, exact circles, all the way up from, I think you're talking like as low as around 2 inches, from 2 inches to 18 and 5/16. Then they have a bigger one if you want to do a 21-inch subwoofer, they have a bigger one for that too. So I'll quickly share what I'm gonna do here. I'm gonna drill a hole roughly in the center of this. This is just this piece of scrap I'm working with because I wanna find the perfect size to work with for the inside of that tube before I put the final material in there. I'm gonna drill a hole there, and the whole thing is gonna pivot around that hole. This here is it, like if you didn't wanna have a hole in the middle, like if you were doing a table or something, then you could actually line this up in the center and pivot on this as opposed to the pin that goes through here into the hole on that. Just gonna put a 1/8 inch hole right down in there. What we're gonna do is go down. Okay, now I'm gonna lock that in place. Talk about a tight fit. So this is the bit that they sell on their website that's useful for most purposes. This is the 1/4 inch, and that's what's aligned with the numbers on the jig. So if you use the 1/4 inch bit, it's gonna line up with your measurements here. So 12 inches would be 12 inches, so on and so forth. If you're only going through a 3/4 inch material, that's all you need. I'm gonna be doing some 1.5, so I'm gonna use my 1/2 inch. These are all spiral upcut bits, so it's gonna pull the chips out. And this one, since I'm gonna go 1.5 inches thick on my final material, I'm gonna go ahead and do my test cuts with this as well. And if I'm not mistaken, I just need to compensate for the extra, it's 1/8 of an inch different on each side, full circle, that's 1/4 inch different. So I just need to do the math. We just wanna line that pin up with the hole, and there it goes. Okay, we're gonna do a 1/4 inch cut at a time. Okay, fingers crossed, guys. Come on, baby. Whoa. That's just about perfect. It's a little over 11 7/8, which gives us plenty of room to get the glue in. If it was exact, you'd be pushing the glue right off both surfaces. About to do the final cuts on there, and before I do that, I just want to mention before I forget, the folks over at Jasper, super cool. They're hooking you guys up with 10% off on one of these, and they're not that expensive. Go to jaspertools.com, enter Wally10 at checkout. You'll get 10% off on this Festool jig. Might even work for some of the non-Festool ones. Two beautiful little circles. Now I'm gonna go ahead and cut the center out for the speaker basket, the subwoofer basket, and the back for the port. That came out pretty much perfect. All right, fingers crossed. I went at 16th up from our test fit size. Oh, nailed it. Perfect. That looks so slick, you guys. All right, I'm not gonna actually drill all the way through it now. I'm just gonna mark it. This is actually the packaging that came with the 8W7. And these, you can see how close that is to the edge. That's why I was so cautious about how much material I cut off, but it ended up cutting it out exactly the same size, which I'm pretty happy about. I'm just gonna mark them, and then we're gonna finish them on the drill press. Okay. All right, got the Aeroport centered. I'm just gonna punch my spots on this one because our paint's still drying. I don't want to get sawdust on it. All right, no one is gonna notice this but me, but there's a few marks on here from sawdust getting between the template. So I'm just gonna, even though this is already finished, I'm just gonna hit it with some 320. All right, I ended up sanding these guys all the way down just because there was enough on there that let's just make it even. And then I got to thinking, maybe this is another Bob Ross moment. You'll have to tell me in the comments. But I was thinking instead of a clear, right, that's a clear coat, we could use black. And I think it might look pretty cool. Let's give it a try. This is a sample piece I sanded down. We're just gonna put some on there and wipe it off. I don't know. That looks pretty cool. What do you guys think? This one or that one? You can't really have a say in this, unfortunately. You're just gonna have to roast me if I got it wrong. We're gonna get this backplate ready for the terminals, and I'm gonna throw a shout out to whoever it was on the station that suggested I just put bolts in the back. Brilliant idea, so much cheaper than buying a screw down terminal. Screw downs are the best too, because they lock, you get more surface area as well. I took it up a notch from just any old bolt. I'm using brass because they're 30% copper. And these being 1/4 bolts, that's gonna carry the sound and the damping factor just as well, I think, as if I just ran that cable straight through, as long as we do it right. So I'm gonna bolt it through. We're gonna lock the inside cable on with one of these nuts, and we'll lock the outside on with these two. All right, so there we go. All right, as many of you may know, there's an ongoing debate about whether to solder or whether not to solder. And I've come to the conclusion a little solder is helpful. And I got a tip from one of you guys to just tin them lightly before dropping them in. Good idea. If we get them tinned first, then I don't need as much solder to get it down into the cavity. So that probably is enough. Crimp that in there. Do the same on the other side. Right, now get this connected to our ring terminal there, and hopefully it'll bleed up in there a little bit too. Okay. Okay, let's get some heat shrink on there. That'll help with flexing at the connection there. Let's see if I can get this one in the same batch. Come on, baby, so these wires don't keep splitting. Keep that from continuing to separate inside the tube. All right, I put a post on YouTube to see if you guys would choose one, and I couldn't wait, so we went with the color that you picked. Half of you, probably. Anyway, this Rubio Monaco, I'm using such a small amount that I'm gonna do the 3-to-1 like this. It's a 3-to-1 epoxy. And really, it doesn't even need to be epoxy. Like, that just makes it cure faster. All right, this is feeling pretty solid. It sat out in the driveway over 90 degrees for 8 hours.
It's really hot in Colorado right now.
Yeah, it is. For Colorado, 98, nothing for some states, dude.
I can't handle this.
So I'm gonna pop these. Take a look inside. You can see, I mean, it's pretty stiff too. Like really stiff. I'm impressed. I think that's gonna be more than enough. And boom, just like so. Little extra, never hurt anyone, I guess. All right, let's There we go. And made a little bit of a mess. No big deal. We're gonna carpet that. We're just gonna pin this in place in a couple spots, like so. Okay, now if you take a look in there, you can see the glue is smushing up against the inside. I'm just gonna smear it around. All right, never hurts to have a little extra rubber butyl. I'm gonna put this in the center where there's only 2 layers. And then on top of that, we're gonna do something as well. I'm gonna put a link to this on the video in the description, along with the Jasper Tool stuff. This is on Amazon. This is basically Dynamat for 5 times less. And I'm telling you guys, it seems to me every bit as good. It even sticks really good too. I always just put it on lightly with my hand, and then I'll take the back of a screwdriver and get aggressive with the screwdriver. That thing likes to slice fingers open with those metal edges, so I wouldn't recommend doing that with your fingers. Using the Super Contact 93 on this stuff works great for this and carpet. Take a little bit to open that nozzle up where it needs to be. Let's get that in there. I just want you to hear how much my voice resonates. Actually, we're gonna knock on there, and then when we put those in, that should be a little bit more dead. And these don't take up that much airspace. Let's test it. All right, testing the base. Pretty dead. I marked the negative terminal black with a Sharpie so we know which is which. All right. Just gonna use my 7/16 deep socket. All right, glue up looks pretty good. Before I get that carpeted, there's a couple of loose ends I want to take care of first. One of them is this. The only thing I don't like about these Aeroports is they're just kind of flimsy. I mean, a lot of you, or not a lot, some of you commented that PVC resonated too much in my last video. And so I added rubber butyl to the inside, and I did notice a difference. Whether that was because I also did polyfill at the same time, I'm not sure, but I can tell you one thing. This is paper thin compared to Schedule 40 PVC with an 8-inch tube. And there's a lot more going on there. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it with rubber butyl, and then I'm gonna do something special to the terminals. There we go. Nothing too fancy, but I can tell you, it's a lot more solid sounding. Don't know if you can hear that. All right, the other thing I'm doing here is I'm gonna solder that last nut to the post, because I'm only contacting threads there, and I want that flat part of the nut contacting the ring terminal fully, and I want all that contact area to transfer to the nut. That is the only weak link with these currently, so this is an experiment. We'll see how it goes, and I'm hoping that it just melts down in there once it's hot enough and creates more contact area. A little bit of expansion there on the glue, so I'm just gonna cut that out so it doesn't show up on our carpeting job. Also, I wanted to show you, I filled in the gap between there with the same glue, the PL3X. And what I'm gonna do now, this cord is gonna probably slap the inside of that tube. So I'm cutting up little chunks of this acoustic foam. I'm gonna thread it on there like a needle so that we have something to keep it from bouncing around, essentially. I'm just gonna put those on there and thread it all the way to the bottom. So I decided just to put them at the very back there so they don't clank on that, that wood there, and then I'm gonna tape it to the back of this because it's gonna adhere better. And that way we have the slack in the line taken out, nothing for it to bang into. So after I trimmed it out, I do need to get an extra layer of carpet on the inside to cover that gap. And so I cut these strips, one for each end. We'll go ahead and apply those then trim them to here, and then we'll get the rest of the carpet on. Okay, I let that get all tacked up, and I taped off the wood so we don't make any regretful moves here. Okay, I'm gonna put a light coating on this side and don't care if it dries up. It's basically just so that when I put the fresh coating that's sort of wet on the tube, it has something to stick to. You can buy felt that already has a backing on it, which makes it adhere better. I bought this for speaker grill material because it does work quite well for that. Check the end length for the stealth build where you cannot see the 12-inch subwoofer below the back of that trunk. And this works great for that. But if you're gonna use it for this purpose, you gotta coat it first. Just wanna show you what that looks like while it's wet. This is the max strength 93M. Don't mess with the 70 or 77, this is what you want. I have heard good things about Gorilla. If you've used both and you prefer one over the other, please share why. Good to know. Surprisingly, that came out a lot better than I expected. Sometimes I surprise myself. I guess if once you've wrapped enough Christmas gifts, it's like riding a bike. I'm gonna cut this square with the back on a down angle, not in, because I don't want to lose the spot that I am trying to cover, remember? I'll take it. I will take that any day. I am happy with that. Not too bad. Here comes the reveal, guys. Oh, baby. Oh, a lot. I'll take it. The only thing I'm gonna criticize myself on is there's some green tape in there I'll have to scrape out. Base cannon. Ready to getting close, guys. I'm gonna put some double-sided adhesive foam tape around the port connection, and we'll do the same on the front for the sub as well. Peel this back and then get our tube in there before it's too late, because that thing will start peeling back up on us. Happy with how that satin finish came out. It looks better than the gloss of the factory port color.
Hello there, I'm Sid.
Sid's my good helper, son's best friend. Ah, there we go, got him in there. All right, so I did 2 rows of the adhesive just to give us extra stability. This does come with a ring, but my ring is stuck to the old enclosure. And where the holes are, I marked with an arrow so that we can line this up. And I just gotta make sure I do this oriented right, because we have a seam over here I don't wanna see. And I'd like to see our logo. And then the tape is kind of a pain because you can't, there we go, perfect. That should do it. And then the seams on the side, lined up on one of the holes. Yeah, that works. All right, so I got all the screws started, not snugged. I'm gonna go in somewhat of a cross pattern, and notice I'm using a handheld screwdriver. It's not worth risking this sub with a power driver. And then I've seen guys fold these up like an ice cream cone. Don't do that. Back on, give it a little cover up. I'll put this right where the seam is because that's gonna be in the back against the seat. And I'm gonna push that in all the way around. Oh yeah, baby. Bass cannon. Bass cannon. Sid, you're the originator of this. Let's hear it.
Bass cannon.
All right, there it is. I got it centered right now. We're gonna have to play around with how it sounds. I definitely think it'd be cool if we could see more of that. But it still comes across as a big question mark. Sir, what is it in the back of your car? All right, so we haven't listened to it yet. We just got it installed, and we're gonna play some music that we like, which means you're not gonna get to hear it. But I wanted you guys to see, yeah, right, exactly. I want you guys to see the authentic first impressions, because all of us have been in this car with the sealed version many times. And so this will be the new ported. And then after we do this, tomorrow I'll come back out and I'll do some samples that are not copywritten for you guys.
Free.
Yes, for you guys to hear. And we'll do an SPL test and a sweep. So here we go. I hope you guys can see from the expression on our faces and the heads bobbing. It's hitting really hard, and you're going to get to hear it pretty soon with some non-copyrighted music. I just wanted to get first impressions on a song that we all are familiar with, and it is night and day different than the sealed version.
It begun to shake my hat off.
That's crazy.
Very
for
powerful.
One 8-inch subwoofer. That's like night and day, huh?
Yes.
Is it still, did this surpass the DD 12-inch in the other car, Reed?
I need to have a side by side.
Oh, a side by side. We might have an 8-inch woofer that needs, we have an 8-inch woofer that needs a side by side comparison with a 12. That's how good it is. I'll take that to the bank. Been screwing around with the DSP on the amp for a while, because the funniest thing, my wife listens to rock music like Linkin Park, and I asked her on her first impression, I said, what are your initial thoughts? And she's like, sounds weak. So she thought the sealed was more powerful, which, you know, we were listening to bass heavy music, which was pumping out those really low frequencies, and that's where that subwoofer likes to live. But the reality is you got to have two tunes for different kinds of music, maybe more if you have different kinds of music. So I've been messing around with this DSP. I'm going to show you what I'm doing. So this is where I currently have it. It sounds a little better. I'm trying to get the kick drum to stand out more. I think we're competing with the front speakers, because those, even though those are upgraded to Audison AP8s, the woofers anyway, they're still on the factory Bose amp, and I can't cut it off. They're still running down to 25 hertz. And so we have phase cancellation. So I'm trying to find the sweet spot with the matter of delay, polarity, the low pass filter, and bumping some spots on the EQ, versus the sealed. It was so much more forgiving. I just had delay and polarity and a flat EQ. I think the bottom line is we're in another rabbit hole here, guys. And that's why things exist like these digital coax decoders that'll transmit the signal for $1,000 to hook up a multi-channel DSP amp for the front, so I can have that crossover in the control, so we don't have phase cancellation and all that good stuff. And that may be the next stop. But for now, bass heavy music sounds awesome. I'll get the rock music to sound where she likes it, and I think next stop's going to be improving the amp situation. Okay, we're gonna do the bass sweep just like we did before. We got decibel reading there, and there's your frequency, so you guys can see what it's doing at different frequencies. Here we go. Well, how about that, guys? I actually dropped the bass output on the amp, as you guys saw earlier when I was showing you my tuning settings, and we still got 130 decibels around 40 hertz, which is insane improvement. I was hoping to get like another 3 to 6. We got almost 10. We got, what is that, 7? We got 7 from our peak, so way more than twice as much bass. In fact, I have a Stealth 12 in one of the other vehicles, and when I did that same sweep on it, we got basically the same peak output. So this little 8 is putting out what I have a Stealth 12 doing in another vehicle. Pretty dang impressive. Let's get on to sound quality test. I'm gonna be playing some EDM music. It's hard to find unlimited copyright-free music, so bear with me. At least this song does a good job of hitting some bass notes for you, so let's check it out. Like a good listening level for just like if you want to feel the beat and not distorting the front speakers. We're hitting well over 120, and sounds way better in my opinion across the board. Just super smooth, tight bass. I was listening to some Glass Animals with bass guitar in it, and the bass guitar sounds like a bass guitar, and that's what you get. That's what you get with that expensive JL premium sound. And I think we need to give some credit to that enclosure, guys. Filmed that a little bit ago just so you guys can see if there was any chuffing. I heard a tiny bit on the very heaviest hits, but you can't hear it inside the car. You could hear the difference when that was flapping around. Almost sucked it right into the tube. Pretty impressed with that Aeroport. Let's get the sweep on it now. Okay, here goes the sweep, guys. Well, there you go, guys. It's definitely a little bigger than the sealed version, but if you're really looking for maximum output, it really does matter to go ported. And thank you to all of you who urged me to do this. I was just gonna keep it sealed because it's primarily my wife driving this car, but I'll tell you what, I drive this car more now because I enjoy the subwoofer so much, and the car, whereas I choose the Outback with the 12 in it most times just because I liked the stereo there better. This made a big difference, and it still sounds musical. And when you go with this SonoTube, it's super lightweight, so if you don't want to really mess with the handling characteristics of your car, I can't recommend it enough. I think the subwoofer is only about 15 pounds because it's just an 8, We probably have about 10 pounds of material there. That's insane. 130 decibels and 25 pounds of weight. I don't think you can shake a spoon at that any way you look at it. And if you haven't seen it yet, make sure you do see the original build. If you are purely dedicated to sound quality and you don't care about extra boom, a sealed enclosure is pretty easy to make, and it does still sound fantastic. In fact, some would argue better. I think my wife still prefers that sealed sound. Really, a lot of it comes down to personal preference. I like a little more excitement in my music, so that's why I'm going to urge her to keep it ported. And stay tuned, because I have other builds down the road. I've got a couple of JL modified 6-inch bazooka tubes, like literal old school bazooka tubes in that truck. And I'm planning to do a DD 1506 tube build where I'm going to make it out of PVC myself and see how that performs compared to how that one currently sounds. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, and keep in mind, it's not just an audio channel. That truck is heavily modified. I show you guys how to do all that stuff, and almost every honey-do list around the house, almost any product modification that I feel like just isn't cutting it, I get my hands dirty all the time. So be sure to follow along and enjoy. Thanks for watching again, and hit that hype button if this is the first week. It helps the channel grow. I do appreciate all the likes, shares, and subscribes and hypes. Take care, guys. Ported edition. I had it right the first time. Too short.